There we go. We are live, everybody. So, welcome Matt, and welcome Ciro, who are looking to see how they can share
Thank
it to
you.
their Facebook page. So they're not being rude. They're just looking down at their phone.
There you go.
This is episode 40 of Celebrate the Brand Ambassador. I think it's almost been one. It's exactly 1 year since I kicked this off, or like a year and a couple of. So it's almost like an anniversary, I guess. So
Oh, amazing.
yeah, so thank you guys for being on this. It's been a lot of fun for
Thank you
me
for the
putting this
invite.
out there, and getting everybody and getting to know so many different brand ambassadors across the country. And and it was great. I met Matt. I met you at BCB, so literally
We,
this BCB. And Ciro, you and I have met a few times, but it's really an honor to have you guys both here. So I start off always with the standard question. So, and feel free to expand about what your responsibilities are. So, what is your job? Because it's so complex. So, feel free to kind of tell everybody. Because as we've discussed, and you both said it to me, the brand ambassador job is different everywhere. So, it's good to hear what you're responsible for. So, I'll start with you, Matt. So, what is your job? Who do you work for? And what are your responsibilities?
my name is Neal. I'm the UK brand ambassador and key accounts for Uncle Nearest. But my job title is changing in January. I know, amazing. And basically, I'm responsible for key accounts in on and off trade, driving sales, and education, relationships, and trainings throughout the UK. It's sliding slightly more into logistics and being a liaison between the US and the UK
Okay.
importers, but that's why the title's changing. But effectively, I kind of do everything.
Are you the only guy in Europe at the moment, or?
I was for about 10 months, but now we have an importer, and that has basically enabled us to have two teams. So it was basically I was the only person here because as lockdown started, we were changing importers, and then that paused, and then Brexit happened, and so for about 9 months we've been between importers, which is insane.
I can imagine it. Yeah, you had like the trifecta, like Brexit and COVID at the same time. It's
Yeah,
that must have
it was
been
incredible.
interesting. And Ciro, who do you work for, and what are your responsibilities?
Hi everyone, and thanks again for the invite, Elaine. Really appreciate it.
My
I work for a company called A Brand New Day. It's a Dutch importer, and I work in the red carpet portfolio. That is the high-end portfolio of the company. It's a small team, just three of us, and we work with brands like Woodford Reserve, Campari, Fernet Branca, Angostura, Luxardo. A lot of Italian brands. That's also why I started working with this company. At the beginning, for me, was like a natural step after leaving the bar scene. And yeah, it's been like a challenging last couple of years. With this situation, it's like I was like moving towards more events in the company,
hmm
and and so that was gonna be my key role in in the red carpet portfolio. But yeah, because of the situation, it's been like kind of a yeah, as Matt was saying as well, doing a bit of everything. It's like I do sometimes graphic design as well. I do I don't know, deliveries, whatever needs to be done.
you're the one-stop shop to have it all done. I do have to ask you, and I didn't, because A Brand New Day is like such the oddest name for a import. Like you just, it sounds like you're a holistic, like a religious, like we're like a cult.
It
We're,
sounds so uplifting.
it sounds so uplifting. Like you're gonna like recruit me in, and like we're gonna have a brand new spiritual awakening. Where does the
Yeah,
name come from?
I don't know exactly where the name comes from actually. I know that the two owners are two old friends. They've been working together for like about 20 years or something like that. The company is 17 years old, but they were already working before together for another importer, and then they decided to start their own company. I have to say it's still like it's quite big now. They have more than 80 employees, but still they kept like the fun and the family vibe. I still remember this episode when I just joined the company. There was like a first staff party like after 2 weeks I joined, And it was a
Right.
beautiful, super fun party. And I went to one of the owners. I was like, "Oh, thank you so much for organizing this. Super cool." And he looked at me super serious. He's like, "I didn't do it for you. I'm having fun. This is for me, not for you." I was like, "I love this guy, legend."
I
It's
was
very
about, I was,
Dutch.
I was about to say, I was about to say also, you're the brands you look after. I mean, COVID must have been pretty hard because they're all very bar heavy. They're
Mhm.
all
Yeah,
bartender favorites.
yeah, it's true. Yeah. Luckily, the company also has other brands are more like consumer oriented. We work really well for with Absolut, for example, in the country, Jack Daniels. So we have other brands that like really strong also on off trade. But yeah, for personally for my job, it's been like quite intense. We had to readapt and try to come up with creative ways to stay in touch with the bar industry, keep the bartenders kind of motivated, and also. In a
Yeah.
good mood sometimes because yeah, it's been quite stressed and yeah, depressing situation. So a lot of people had to struggle with having a job or like paying bills at the end of the month. So it's been like quite difficult. A
Yeah.
lot of friends had to leave the country, unfortunately, because Amsterdam is the Netherlands a bit less, but Amsterdam specifically is really international. You have people from everywhere working here. But during the first lockdown, most people just left because they couldn't
Wow.
find a job, and I mean
Yeah,
in the hospitality industry, so they had to leave and go back to their countries. Unfortunately, some of them
yeah.
came back. That's good. Some others not yet, or they won't. I'm not sure, but
I'm sorry, did
future.
they have to leave? And I know this is totally off topic because I always think of Amsterdam as a place that really looks after, their staff. I mean, that's why most bars have very limited people working there because, I mean, I know it's somewhere in the UK, like, your health benefits. I mean, you could take a leave of absence for stress and you'll get paid, a salary. So did they have to leave because they weren't making money or because that was just they
No,
wanted to go home again?
unfortunately, what happened is that most of the big companies they kept the staff till the contracts expired, and then when the contract expired, they didn't renew it. So
Gotcha.
there was the sad reality, unfortunately. Like I had friends that they had like a contract in like May or June, so they got paid for a few more months, and then when that period ended, they had to find something else, which didn't really happen for most of them. And yeah, because no one was hiring in that period, of
Yeah.
course.
Yeah.
That makes sense. And we're definitely going to dive into what you guys did, some of the creative things you had to change while this is happening, because it's still really happening there. I'm hoping in the States we're not going to follow suit, and we're definitely going to go into it. But before we go there, I want to talk about just a little bit more about your guys' background, because you both have very interesting backgrounds before you got into being a brand ambassador. So tell me, basically what you used to do before you did this role, the short version, and what led you, the highlights, and then what led you to take the job. Especially Matt, I love your story, how you actually got the job for Uncle Nearest, which is very funny. Ciro, I will start with you this time. So what were you doing before you got this job?
So first of all, I want to apologize because I have ADHD. I found out this year, and then sometimes I get lost in what I'm saying, and it just like could take forever. So if I get lost, please bring me back.
So Ciro.
Yeah, no, I was studying at university communication, and I had a family business, so they asked me to help during the weekends and holidays, and I got really passionate about bartending. Started doing courses, competitions. That's how I started bartending, and then fast forward like 12 years, and then I was a bit tired of working behind the bar, not because I didn't like it anymore, just like I didn't feel inspired anymore as I was before, and I thought it was not fair towards other people in the industry or like our guests at the bar and the owners of the place where I was working. So I think you have to do always your best and be always 100%. So I decided to stay in the industry but do something different. And I started with some consultancies, events, and then I got approached by Brandy Day to represent the Italian brands they have in the portfolio, and then became
But
like
you
brand
also
ambassador.
did, I'm going to let you brag a little bit more because you also, because the one thing I have seen in common with a lot of brand ambassadors is the fact that to be an upgraded brand ambassador, you need to be kind of an entrepreneur and you need to be always doing things that are above and beyond your job. Because the brand ambassador role requires that. You have to it's a multifaceted job. As you guys led to in the beginning was, you had to become like the one-stop shop for the brand and you had to be the team player who's doing a little bit of everything. and not everybody has those qualities. And I think when you do things like competitions, now, Ciro, you entered quite a few competitions. So tell us some competitions you went and won.
Yeah, it's true. I have to say, I always did it because I thought I could learn something, I could meet people. So for me, it was the social aspect as well of that, and like connecting, building a network. And I did that also with the bar shows, for example. For I think like I don't know, 8, 10 years, I was just going to any bar show that I could afford, paying myself, just because I thought it was a way of learning and build up a network. And now actually,
That's one of the best qualities of a brand ambassador.
It really is. Yeah.
and then
No,
that
I
helped
agree.
me a lot and still helps me a lot. And now I work with people that actually I met like 10 years ago, just randomly in a bar during the bar show in London or Berlin or whatever. And yeah, I did quite a few competitions back in Italy first. The Bacardi Martini Grand Prix there, won it in 2008, I think. And then I moved here. I did the Absolut Invite competition. Did the Best Bartender of the Year in 2014.
Which ones did you win?
What was I?
Did you win all of those?
Yeah, the one that I mentioned. Yeah, no,
Yeah.
I participated way more of those. That those are the ones that I won.
Those are some big competitions to win.
Yeah.
There was a lot of fun and a lot of learning in it. And for example, the Bacardi Martini Grand Prix in Italy, I participated twice. The first one was the first competition I ever did, and for me it was a shock because I was like so unprepared, and I was like, "Whoa, this is a different world. Like you need to come prepared. You need to arrange things. You need to study for this. It's not just like, oh, I'm making a cocktail. Maybe it's a good cocktail. It's not
Mhm.
just about the drink itself." Uh, and yeah, you need to know the competition itself. You need to know the judges or a little bit. And I don't want to say that it needs to become a job, but you need to be prepared. Yeah,
Yeah.
and I was definitely not. And then the second year I came back and I was like, I got this. And actually, I won it. So it was nice. I was super
And to
excited.
your credit, I mean, the point of, as you said, a meeting, because I tell people all the time, people ask me how to build your personal brand, and I always say, if you are a bartender, competitions is the best way. And for you, I mean, it is about the you learn how to do, even if you suck, you learn something every time you go.
Presentation.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then, as you said, you build a network, right?
Yeah, and then I still remember I have a really funny episode that the first competition that I did was with this Italian bartender that he lost his luggage on the way there. So he arrived 2 hours late and he didn't have anything. So all
Wow.
the homemade ingredients, all the special products and tools, they were in his luggage. So he was
Oh,
kind of desperate, and but he was still smiling and friendly. And we were like in the backstage prepping, and I just gave him a lot of stuff and then helped him. And he was like surprised, and I was like, yeah, I mean, I guess this is also why we're here, right? To just uh,
Mm-hmm.
connect and
Hospitality.
yeah. And then we're still really good friends now. Like yeah, 14 years later almost. So, like,
I love that. I think
me
that's
too.
great. And that's how you build your network, which is the
yeah,
other most important thing for being a brand ambassador. You have to have a serious
totally,
network.
Yeah.
totally agree. Yeah, definitely, 100%.
100%. And Matt, tell me your story.
Well, a million years ago, I started life as an actor. I studied in the Royal Scottish Academy of Music and Drama, and then CalArts, California Institute of the Arts. And obviously, as an actor, I spent more time bartending than I did acting. That's just one thing. And so I moved into sort of working behind bars. It was a good fit. From there, the acting really helped, and I moved into sort of events. I think the most telling point at which I started an event, and I dropped a tray, and it was an onyx tray with about 30 glasses of champagne on it at a high-end event for a fashion company. And the owner of the company came over and went, "You can't hold a tray. You're awful at this." And I was like, "Yeah, I'm terrible. I'm tall. There's too many nerves." I was like, "Can you work behind a bar?" I was like, "Yeah, I can work behind a bar." Instantly, I got treated better. Instantly, I thought, "This is where I want to be." and from there, the skills that I had as an actor, the presentation, the service, my OCD, my absolute sort of wanting everything to be perfect, it just sort of helped. I started learning cocktails, started getting geeky into coffee, and then by the time I got to a point in events, I worked all the big ones. I'd worked Buckingham Palace, McLaren F1, a lot of private events, worked in Davos, the Financial Forum, did a lot of corporate stuff, a lot of NDAs, and it's exhausting. it was a lot of travel. It was amazing. People like, you're working in Paris. I'm like, I saw the inside of a hotel room and the bar.
Yeah.
And then I went home. I was like, do you know what? I want something stable. Moved into bars, started working bars. From there, I worked at a bar that was sponsored by William Grant and Sons, and they liked the knowledge. They liked the fact that I was, as you said, going above and beyond. That people ask for a cocktail, and you go, oh no, I can get you something else. Oh, what do you like? And it was all youthful enthusiasm back then. And they ended up picking up, and I ended up working for a small group of, for an agency that was a small group of people who basically ran I've told you what I call brand support. We would be hired by big brands to be ambassadors for their products whilst their ambassadorial team was there. So we could tell everybody about the products, sell products, work at all these different events, but their actual ambassadors could concentrate on the key people who would be coming to the stand. People who really it's the people who really needed them. So there'd be points at which you'd see somebody going towards, the global brand ambassador for something, and you'd be going, no, this is my job. Come here, I'll tell you what all these are, while he talks to, the owner of the whiskey exchange, or somebody who's invested in something, or running an event, or some high class bartender like yourself.
It's so funny. I've never heard this system before. Like, I mean, I've heard like there'll be like promotional people there, but never like the guards. Almost like, let me just take you people over here so they can, like the VIP people, like let me get escorted. Like, let me escort you to the global person. You people are you minions people just stay over there.
It wasn't that brutal, but it kind of was.
Yeah.
And then when there was cocktail sort of events for those things, the brand ambassadors would have to do more talking than they would have to do bartending. So we'd end up making these drinks and really helping. And from there, I remember getting a phone call, and a friend of mine who was an actor had an audition, and he had to pull out of an event. And he asked me if I wanted to do it. And I was like, well, I'm not doing anything today. I went to this event, which was for a Tennessee whiskey company and called Uncle Nearest. And I loved the story and the liquid, but it was a one-day thing, and they were just launching. And I was sort of like, yeah, it's good. It's really nice. I kind of got the story. I hadn't completely remembered it. I'd only been there about 2 hours. And unfortunately, somebody had all their luggage lost, and they couldn't run a masterclass. I can't remember the brand that cancelled on the stage. And they said, does anybody want to run a old-fashioned masterclass? If you're working for a whiskey company, we can use your whiskey in it. And the person who was bringing the whiskey in said, we can do it. Can anybody here do it? And I don't know, I must have felt really nice that day. I didn't even charge them extra. I was like, if you don't use the video as promotional material, I can do it, because I don't want to damage anything else I'm doing. So I got up, I did a masterclass about old fashions. I don't know how much I said about the brand, but I made a really good drink. And after that, I started working for them on the side. So along with everything else, and then but doing all of their events. And then after 2 months, the CEO came over and gave me an interview, which I half thought was an interview. And I started working for them as their brand ambassador in the UK, which was great, because I'd been looking to get out of events for a little while, because it is exhausting.
Mm-hmm. No, absolutely. Which is funny, because that's what Ciro does all the time. But I forgot to ask you yesterday, did your friend ever like kick himself because you got the
Weirdly enough, my friend is now an eco carpenter. He's not an actor anymore. It happens to a lot of us. He builds eco lodges around the UK.
All right. Well, that's a big career change. Like, I'm pimping whiskey, you're building eco lodges.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Different
Both
direction.
happening in the world.
Both happening in the world, exactly. In a different way. But I love that. All right. So, and can you continue your story? Well, I guess I'll switch up the questions a little bit. Now, Ciro, you're Italian. You are living in the Netherlands. Now, the one thing I know, since my husband lived there for 17 years, he always says that Dutch people are very blunt and to the point. They even have, there's less words actually in their language, so there's less words for them to express themselves as well. Whereas in Italian, who can be very passionate. So it must have been, when did you move to the Netherlands? And then what are some things you noticed in your cultural differences that you had to kind of adjust to?
Yeah, I have to say, I think I notice it more when I start working for a Dutch company. So when I start being a brand ambassador, because when I was working in bars, most of the stuff was made by experts. Also the guests that we were having, most of them they were experts as well, or anyway, people that were used to like an international environment. So it was a little bit more common also to speak English and just normal, let's say. Uh, but when I start working for a Dutch company, also had, I mean, I deal a lot with international people, but still the company is Dutch, and then a lot of my colleagues are Dutch, or a lot of people I have to work with are also Dutch. So I notice a lot the difference, especially with emails and the way you approach people, or you write things. At the beginning, I was telling you yesterday that. Yeah, I think I was also like a little bit too detailed in my emails, so they were like too long and too much information in it. While the emails that I was getting back were like two sentences that bam bam. Okay, why? Sorry. And then at one point, my manager even told me, he was like, "Yeah, your emails are too long." He's like, "No one is reading all that." Like, I appreciate it. I love the effort, and then what do you put in it? But it's like we don't need that. So bullet points, just done, done, done. Those are the information we need. Otherwise, you're not gonna get approval. You're not gonna get people interested on board. Blah blah. Okay, I see how that works. So definitely, the culture is quite different, and I notice a lot of times with I think Italians in general are also quite formal. So you like Greek people, before you ask for something, it was like try to connect first, and then
Mhm.
Yeah.
you get to that, you build it up. But here it's more like, okay, I need something, you have it, but let's let's get straight to the point. It's like
Which is very New York, right? It's so funny because I didn't think of it because it was actually my husband who actually used to tell me like your emails are too blunt because I was very blunt. I'd just be like, this is what I need. And now my emails usually start like, hi, I hope you had a nice Thanksgiving. Like, I hope all is well and your family is great. And then I say all the things. And then to hear that, like the Dutch, who are much more like, just give me what you want. I need this,
I think I finally found like a kind of a mix of the two, because I still have like, hey, how you doing? How was your weekend or whatever? I don't know.
Yeah.
That is always there. Or at the end, oh, have a great day, bye. But then the part that is the body, the really important part is shorter and like more like bullet point, like
Yeah.
summarize.
I think I need to do that to my emails.
Yeah, I was gonna say something. Corporate communications, you're not alone. That's the one thing I hear a lot of people struggle with because if you've never written corporate communications, you don't know that you're not supposed to write this like, you want to explain yourself, right? And like the feeling behind the story behind it. And yeah, and then when you start receiving those on the other end, a lot of people, I literally sometimes I just delete them. I'm like, that's just way too long for me. Like I'm like, I just send a person a text. I'm like, just text me or call me because I'm not.
And now what I also try to do is like try to see the other person, the receiver of the email point of view. So if before I was like writing a really long letter because I'm hypersensitive, I'm really emotional as well sometimes. So I try to give you all the background information, why I'm doing this, where I'm coming from, where I want to go. Then sometimes it's just like, okay, I'm sending this email to someone that it has a different kind of personality and more like direct, more structure, blah blah. So they don't need all these. And then I start removing things from the email. Like, okay, this is not necessary. This is not necessary. These I can put in these other ways.
Ciro, do you deal with both on trade and off trade?
No, mainly it's on trade. Like sometimes we do something for off trade as well, but it's like I would say like 5%.
Right.
Really,
But you tailor now. You've started tailoring your emails to the type of person who's on the end.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's a bit extra work also because I usually at first write the email and then I think about it. I'm like, oh yeah, wait. So I have to go. I go through again. I say, oh, okay, yeah, no, adjust these, adjust that, cut these, cut that.
No, which is very smart. I mean, I
That's
teach
good.
people in my brand ambassador course, like if you've received an email from the person, look at how they speak to you and respond in the same way. Like if they are more formal, if they're more casual, but if you're your superior and they're being more casual, you still have to be one up. You still have to be a little more serious than they are. But yeah, you can respond to them in their language. Even when you're talking to them, you have to learn to mirror their language and speak to them in the same tone, because somebody's being really serious and then you're being way too casual. It doesn't come across in the same way, vice versa. If they're being very casual and suddenly you're so serious, they will be like, this person's not so much fun to talk to.
Yeah. Sure, yeah.
Yeah,
But I think that's a great skill also, to be able to adapt to the person you have in front of you. And I think for me, for example, helped me a lot when I was working behind the bar. The fact that you could, talk with different kind of guests, different background they have, different education, and you can adapt a little bit, or have always something interesting to say to anyone that is in front of you, or in a way they can relate to. And
that goes back to your networking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, absolutely. Well, that goes away. So, Matt, I mean, I know you talked about, you learned, and I want to talk about two things. And the question is, and Ciro, you already started talking about it, which was, one of the things that, we all struggle when you take on the role of brand ambassador. It's much more complex than anybody ever gives it credit for. And everybody has kind of a learning period of things they have to adjust to. But Matt, yesterday you said something very interesting about things you think somebody should know before they take the brand ambassador job. So can you expand on that?
Well, for a start, when I started deciding that I was working sort of brand support, when I decided I wanted to leave events. Well, I mean, you never leave events, as Ciro knows. You actually end up planning them more. But when I actually wanted to leave the bouncing around, working for many different companies and worrying about where the paychecks came from, one of the things I thought about was brand ambassadoring. As I want to be a brand ambassador. And when that opportunity came around and I got interviewed, I think, and wrongly, I spoke more than the CEO of the company did. I wanted to impress. I spoke a lot, and by the time we'd finished, I think I'd said about 4 things about what I didn't think I was good at, and what I thought I was good at, and what I wanted to do and what I didn't want to do. And then I accepted the job, and I was like, it wasn't until about 4 weeks after I was like, I don't know what I've accepted. In fact, I have no idea what this entails wholly. And that's what I should have been doing at the interview. I should have actually been talking about the intricacies of what the job was, because everybody I've met who's a brand ambassador has a different job. And the only things I'd seen were the event side. So I'd seen them when they were on. Yeah, I've seen them backstage, and I've seen them on their laptops. So I knew it wasn't all, it wasn't all tits and teeth. It wasn't all like smoke and mirrors. It wasn't all happiness. There was a lot of things you were judged on, but I had no idea that what was required of me. And when the sales stuff came up, the reports, like I had the amount of time writing about what I'd done and justifying things, and then some of the budgets, then the relationships, and it was just like, okay, wow. It took me about 6 months to actually realize what my full job was, and then it took me about another 2 months to implement it.
That's
yeah, but I think this is like quite common. The fact that a lot of people don't see the the hard work that goes into it. They just see the rainbows and butterflies, the fun part. You're traveling so much, you're going here and there, and they apply their idea of traveling to what you're doing. So a normal person when travels going on holiday, so just visiting the city, eating, drinking, whatever. We do that as well, but that's not the main thing that you're doing there. And a lot of times, as you said, you just see the room where you're staying and the place where you're working. That's it. And then
my Instagram says a completely different story.
Oh yeah, Instagram.
That's my dream. I want to be as happy as my Instagram shows. That would be amazing. Like, to look at those pictures, like, I'm like, is that me? Really? I was like, it's fucking cool.
Yeah. That was amazing. I didn't even know it was that good. I don't remember experiencing that. But that brings a good point. It's like, and the one thing that people, because I think some people get so excited that they got offered the job, that this couldn't go for any job, right? It's realizing that you have to do as much vetting on your side as they are in there. Like, okay, so what exactly does this job entail? Like, what are you expecting me on a daily basis? Like, how do you expect me to communicate with you? How much of this is me writing reports? How much? It's okay. They're not gonna fault you. Most of us never ever ask the amount of questions you should, but you really need to, because then you might be like, I don't really want this job, or your expectations, you actually like realize like, all right, now I at least have some idea of what I'm supposed to be doing, because they don't even know half the time. They just have an idea. A lot of people, they have an idea. Your brand manager's like, I think I want this person to do that. I'm not really sure what it looks like, but it looks nice on paper.
That's something I get all the time. Now I'm in the position I'm in. I'm talking to other brand ambassadors. I'm talking to other brands who are thinking, right, well, we kind of need a salesperson, a brand ambassador. We need to build our team. And they'll say, we're looking for a brand ambassador. I'm like, what do you want them to do? And it's like, well, we want them to go into bars. We want them to take our bottles in. We want them to negotiate pour deals. We want them to talk about, retros. We want them to talk about how we can work together with bars. I'm like, that's not a brand ambassador.
Yeah,
or what a bartender thinks a brand ambassador is.
Right.
So make sure you mention that. And it's about people knowing what they're looking for. It's also about people, like for me, I sort of fell on my feet, and I'm very, very lucky that all the stuff that was included in the role, I actually quite liked. And I really enjoyed learning new things and great things. So it wasn't terrible, but if I'd known of it earlier, I could have really prepared.
Right. Well, how did you overcome? Because you said, didn't you meet somebody at some point? Somebody who was working.
Yeah. My flatmate was the brand at the time. He was the brand ambassador for Chambord, and his job was probably at that point the most brand ambassador person, stereotypical brand ambassador person I knew, because Chambord is a party liquid. His was cocktail development for the brand. His was presentations. His was parties. His was just all of that stuff. He was exhausted, and he was larger than life, but that's what he did. But he saw I was freaking out, and he saw I didn't really know what was going on. So he asked his friend, who was the head of advocacy at Brown-Forman, if he wouldn't mind having a word with me. And 6 months in, and the guy was like, how long have you been doing this? And I was like, I've been doing it for 6 months. We'd met up for coffee. And he was like, so you haven't got a clue what you're doing? I was like, no, not one. And he's like, it's okay. Keep faith. People will ask you what they want you to do, and you're going to have to learn like that. And just know that it's not your fault. So just keep going, and don't be a dick.
Yeah.
It's like,
great advice.
I was like, okay, I don't think I'm a dick. I don't think I'm a dick. But I actually realized that, like, I've kept that piece of information, and I've suddenly realized that you have to work at not being a dick. I mean,
I love it. Tell me what you mean by this, because I think it's very funny.
You just really have to work at being a dick. It's not a passive thing. You go into a bar, and if somebody says a piece of information that you don't particularly agree with, or you don't think's right, or they come at you because they're hostile about your brand, don't rise to it. Don't embarrass anybody. Don't shout at them. The very first job I had, or gig I had after I got the job, we were setting up for I think it was a table and a tasting and stuff like that, and it was in a big room, and it wasn't all whiskey, it was different spirits. And I just finished setting up, and somebody now next to me, I won't say who it is because I'm not a dick, came over.
Oh, you learned something. That's great.
Yeah. Keep on saying it. It's imprinted in my brain. And he was working for a gin company, and he came over and said, what have we got here then? I was like, well, this is a Tennessee whiskey. And he went, oh, is it a bourbon or is it a Tennessee whiskey? And I was like, well, technically it can be both. One's a federal law, one's a state law. And that sort of went over his head. And he was like, so is it a bourbon? I was like, yeah, it can be classified as a bourbon. He's like, oh, so it's 4 years old. I was like, oh, no, it doesn't have to be 4 years old. If my favorite story is, it could come off the still and you could put it in an oak bucket and walk it to the side and tip it into a glass and it'd be there's your bourbon. It's amazing. He's like, no, I think you're wrong. Like, oh, okay. I don't think I am. He's like, look, if you're going to start selling stuff, he obviously knew I was green. I was very excited. And he's like, if you're going to start selling stuff, you should really do your research. Bourbon has to be 4 years old. I can get my laptop and bring it over here and I can show you if you'd like. I was like, no, it's okay. You're right. Do you know what? I think
I would definitely say yes. Yeah, show me, please. I need to learn. I need to educate it myself. Please show me.
It was my first day. I was like, okay, no, you're probably right. I think I'm getting mixed up with the bottle in bond or some of the rules that came in later. In 1962 with Bourbon Act. So you know what? I'm probably wrong. I served it, and my boss turned around after he'd left. I was like, he was wrong. Yeah, I 100% know he's wrong. It's like, but you could have told him. I was like, the show hasn't even opened. What joy would there have been me embarrassing this man?
Yeah.
Like, bring your laptop over. I'm going to embarrass you. I'm going to tell you exactly why you're wrong. And by the way, you're going to remember me and my brand, and you're going to think I'm a dick, and you're going to sit there the entire festival and not say a single thing. I do still dream, though, that he's gone home, he's looked at his laptop, and he feels crippling guilt and anxiety.
I really hope he did. Otherwise, he thinks that you were the ignorant guy working that doesn't even know his shit.
Like I was ignorant. Well, I'm going to give you. I'm going to share a story of brand ambassador Dickness, and I won't say the name because he's still a friend of mine, even though he did this thing. And I said to him, I was like, "Dude, that was such a dick move." So he was in a cocktail bar, and doing his thing, and he just done a big education session, and he ordered a cocktail, and he did the thing you just should not do. He sent the drink back. He asked for a 1/4 ounce more simple syrup. If they would just mind that, could you just give me a 1/4 ounce more simple syrup to like fix your drink, because it's just not balanced. And he was saying these words to the bartender, who, and you can see the bartender's face being like, "Nope, I'm not having this conversation. Like, wow, how dare you come into my house?" And it was a pretty prestigious cocktail bar, and like tell me that you need, that my drinks are not balanced. And it just came across all wrong. And next thing you know, people started texting everybody, and it went like, it was it was not good. I was like, dude, you just drink it, you suck it up, and you drink it, and you tell them it was great, and you walk away. I'm like, if it's not going to hurt anybody but you.
Yeah, but I think it sometimes also is how you say things, because I think in the same situation, if you would just say, "I have a really sweet tooth, can I just have a little sugar extra?" I know the drink is perfect, great, thank you so much, but I like it a little bit sweeter. Is that a problem?
Yeah.
I don't think the bartender would be offended.
No,
not at all.
It's when you say, I think you just didn't make it balanced, and I just need I think a 1/4 ounce of simple syrup. Like, yeah. If you said it like you, then it would have been fine. Like, I've said that. I'd be like, actually, I like my drinks a little more tart. Do you mind if I just have, like an extra lime? Like, I've said that, just like I have I like them a little more sour. This is perfectly balanced. I just like mine a little, but yeah, no, that was just a
fine line.
It is a fine line. It really is. All right, so let's talk about. All right, so you guys, and I'm crossing my fingers that it's not going to come this way, but Europe has been in lockdown multiple different times, and so let's just, like, for the world, just expand. Like, where are you right now? And Ciro, what's happening in the Netherlands right now?
Yeah, we have a mild lockdown at the moment. The bar and restaurant have to close at 5 o'clock at the moment, but
5 p.m.
Yeah, but a lot of places actually they're not opening at all, because for them doesn't make any sense. Some restaurants, they still opening, and they manage to do at least lunch, and they kind of getting they survive, let's say. But yeah, a lot of bars, they're not even opening, and some actually decided to stay closed the whole month and see what happens in January. So they just saw a lot of posts on social medias, like people saying, yeah, unfortunately with these conditions we're not able to open, so we rather stay closed till next press conference and see what the government's gonna come up with. But at the moment, unfortunately, we're not able to serve you guys, so yeah, we're gonna stay closed. For them, it's cheaper like that than actually opening
and closing. That's crazy.
Yeah, it's a really bad situation at the moment. I have to say it's also unexpected, because the Netherlands was doing pretty well, and this happened already twice. And I think once they reopened everything too quickly after the summer, and then we had like a spike, and then they had to slow down and go back and put in place again restriction. And then now again they were like really optimistic about how the old situation was going, and then everything was kind of running smooth. We had events again. Clubs even were open, even if they had to close at midnight. But yeah, it was like different, but still at least like kind of a decent. And then we had like the worst spike in like since the beginning. Like the maximum new cases that we had the last year was 11,000 a day, and then now we are over 22,000 a day. So it's double.
Damn.
Very crazy.
That is
So they had to do something, of course. I understand it, and health and safety is our first priority. But I don't know. It's definitely really another hard hit for the industry.
it's amazing. I mean, if people make it out of the third round, it's like you
Yeah.
really are a tough business, because I don't even know how you survive a third round and
Yeah.
lockdown and going through the holiday season, which is a big season.
No,
True that,
massive.
yeah. I have to say also that what I found really impressive is like how you manage the stress, because I think everyone in this society is handling a level of stress that is has no precedent. You like I always struggle with anxiety in my life, and I had it since I was a kid, and I think it's related to the ADHD was that was undiagnosed, and then now I know I'm doing better, and I see a lot of people that before they were like super cool, super chill, and now they're super stressed, and I recognize a lot of symptoms that I had before. But a lot of business owners, they still show up and they still, you know, keep fighting, even if it's like, really difficult. And I think in our industry, what we usually have to do is also like put a smile on the face of our guests, right? Or people coming to our venues or bars, whatever. So it's like you have to put aside your own struggle, your own problem, and try to
Which is
be
not
an
easy.
entertainer. And I think it's really difficult at the moment. When you're not sure if you're going to be able to pay the bills and then keep your bar open, your restaurant open, and pay the salary of your employees. I don't know, and still, showing up and doing your job with a smile on your face. I think it's really, really admirable.
Yeah,
I don't
no,
know how
it
you
is an
able.
incredible thing. And to be honest, I didn't think we'd be having these kind of conversations again. I just kind of thought we were like,
Um,
all right, let's move on. Matt, what's it like in England right now?
Well, after hearing that,
Yeah, things are great.
well,
but
it's really confused. The language that's being used around the Omicron, is it Omicron? I can't remember.
Omicron, yeah.
Omicron variant is very. It's concerning because you can't really tell which way it's going to go yet. I personally think that another lockdown would be exceedingly bad, especially for hospitality. The first 2, 3, whatever we've had, were, especially the ones that came out of nowhere, were crippling, because perishables and because beer and stuff like that, and as Ciro said, you've got a lot of people who are either colleagues or friends who are in that side of the industry really suffering. And not only suffering, some are suffering. We touched on the mental health thing, because you're sat at home, and even if your intent is to go full-time bartender and just be behind the bar, you're an entertainer. Your business is people.
Mhm.
You love people. That's one of the reasons I still love doing that whole side of the job. I really, really enjoy connecting with people, and times like this, in something like this, I enjoy talking, and other times I just enjoy listening. People are really interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And you haven't got that, and then there's it's just a huge struggle. And so over
Is
here,
there any shutdowns? Is there any limitations? Are bars open full on?
bars are open full on. We've just had limitations put on public transport. You have to wear masks on public transport, and after 2 months after introducing an antigen test that you could take if you're coming back from abroad, it's now again a PCR test, and you have to isolate once you arrive from abroad, and then pay to be released for a PCR test to be released. So internally, there's a couple of extra legislation have come in, but most of what's happened here in the UK is borders. The borders are the sort of lines, the walls are going up. Yeah,
Wow.
we're making sure that nobody who's infected is coming in, but it's making it harder to travel. Full stop. And we're coming up to Christmas while they work out what this variant looks like. I mean, our infection rate's been pretty bad for the last however long, but the hospitalizations haven't. So we all just assumed over here with the vaccination that it was over. But this is a stark reminder that it possibly isn't.
It possibly isn't. No, it's crazy. Well, I will say it really, and I'm fingers crossed that but every state here is different. In New York State, we've always had to wear the mask. Everybody wears mask indoors, but in restaurants are definitely mandating vaccine cards before you go into the restaurant. I know it's the same thing in Holland before this last one happened, which makes everybody feel a little more comfortable. But I will say some of the, I hate to say benefits, but there has been some creativity that has happened because of the pandemic. I mean, doing shows like this, I wouldn't have done it, probably if we didn't have a lot of the audience at home, learning, people getting used to being on Zoom. And I know, Ciro, you did some pretty creative programming while this, the hardcore shutdowns happened at the beginning of this. You want to talk a little bit about that? And do you think you might do them again?
Yeah, actually, I had a conversation about that this morning with my manager. So probably we're gonna do at least another edition. So the best practice that we came up with, it's called the bar tours. So what I was saying is that as a former bartender, what I was taking my inspiration and my knowledge from most of the time was like traveling and going to other countries, like I don't know, UK to London or New York or Berlin, bar shows. Meeting other bartenders, go to other bars and see what they were doing and where the new trends. But now you can't do it. You can't travel. You can't have that source of inspiration. And I think it's like a big a negative side, of course, for bartenders. So how we can make it possible. So we came up with this idea. Actually, I have the boxes here. I'll show you. Wait.
Yeah, go for it.
So the idea was to
Yes.
bring the
I'm
bar.
just hearing shattering bottles.
Yeah, that's yeah.
So this was the box. So the other way around. Bar tours, couch edition. This was the first edition that we did. It was in London. So the idea was
Nice.
that for each edition, you had 3 cocktails, 3 bars, and 3 spirits matched with them. There was like a map of the city we were visiting, where the bars were placed in the map. The first one, as you can see, was Connaught Bar, the bar with no names, basically, because it's a Remy Savage bar.
Yeah, it's a fantastic bar.
Yeah, and Saturn's Whiskers. And then inside you had a little leaflet booklet with an explanation of the project, the recipes of the cocktails, story of the bar, a little this Giorgio Bargiani, the bio of the bartender, and then you had the 3 cocktails inside.
Wow.
And then on the night of the event, we were having a live Zoom meeting with like around 50 bartenders from the Netherlands. They were getting this box for free at their home. And then we had like a kind of interview with the 3 bartenders. We were visiting virtually their bars. They were telling us about the story of the place, the drink they were making for us. And while actually the bartenders joining the conversation, they could drink it. So they were able to taste it. And then at the end, of course, there was a Q&A session, and then the guys could just interact a little bit. And the funny thing, of course, because it was during curfew, you couldn't go anywhere afterwards, and you have to stay home. So basically, people were just drinking in front of the computer. And I was saying yesterday to Elaine that at the first edition, at the end of the night, I stood up from the couch, and I was completely drunk. I was going to the oh. I think this is the first time that I get shit faced in front of a computer. Fantastic.
That's impressive. That's really impressive. That's a really good. That's an amazing idea,
isn't it? I thought that was really, really clever. I thought, and people have come up with some really great ones. But I think the fact you got to visit the 3 bars and have the 3 bartenders, and you have a huge portfolio, which makes it.
Yeah, that helped as well. Yeah, and we did New York edition as well. We did Dante, Maze, and Ataboy. It was also really, really fun. And like I was with my colleague Mike, and we're basically sitting on his couch in his house, and we also had like a fake screen behind us. There was an Uber drive, so you could see actually the Uber driving through the streets of London and New York, which I also think is a little bit funny. I mean, there is not much you can do when you're sitting at home, but you have to do something. And then for us again was also like networking, getting in touch with people, and also kind of being there for each other. Because otherwise you just isolate and get really depressed, not being able to do what you love to do, and then not being able to share that passion. At least you see familiar faces, you have a drink, you have a laugh. It was a nice project to do. We might do.
I was going to ask you, do you think so I've asked this to a lot of people. It's like a lot of these things. It's like these are kind of best practices you wouldn't be able to do before, and now everybody's kind of used to it. But some of them are, I think, are still useful to do going forward, even if you don't have a lockdown.
I would
Yeah,
definitely
actually,
attend that.
yeah, a few people actually told me if we were going to do it afterwards, and actually a few brands were interested to do it as a regular thing, and they will be willing to invest in something like that with bars from all around the world, because I think there is definitely interest. Like if you're a cocktail lover and you're not able to travel that much, I think that can be really interesting. That like let's say once a month, you know that you get these box, you can sit in front of your computer and your couch, and then yeah, try some crazy cocktails from I don't know Singapore, Sydney, or whatever.
Yeah.
I'm not 100% sure travel is going to be good for a long time, or at least not really stressful. So I think that's a phenomenal idea. Yeah, I definitely sign up to that.
Yeah, no, I would too. No, I think it's good. And I think that's the great thing about it, is like things are now scalable. You're able to do things in a much easier way, much faster, reach a broader audience. I mean, obviously, we'd all like to be there in person. But I think things like this, you know, if it's just like once a month and I'm hanging out, it's like, oh, I don't feel like going out tonight. Oh, I'm going to go to that thing. It's an event and see people network from people all around the world. That would be, and I'm not forced to do it anymore. I actually can go to a bar. I think I might be like, all right, this will be a fun little like treat, which is very cool. I don't know, Matt, I don't know if you did anything that you want to talk about.
I mean, it was basically more of the same. It was like pivoting onto, virtual tastings, seeing what you could do for people. I mean, that the great thing about that, it was actually targeted at bartenders, and it was free. That's a community spirit. For me, what really happened was it was be a human. You know, people are suffering from that side of the industry. Like my friends are, so it was just buying stuff from bars, trying to help out. A couple of bartenders would like cycle other bars cocktails around. They were just, you were trying to employ as many people as you could to try and help out, whilst obviously the other side, the off-trade side exploded. Like bottle sales went through the roof. People were buying everything on the internet, and you were trying to help them in a completely different way. You were trying to utilize sort of online marketing. You were trying to help out their staff who are knackered and facilitate deliveries and stuff like that. And you're like, wow, there are two sides of this doing massively different things. And that's where you get as Ciro's talking, you talk who's in front of you. If it's a bartender who's worried that his job's on the line, you are one person. If it was somebody else who's there going, I'm sending out thousands of boxes of pre-mixed cocktails or cocktails at home, can you run a masterclass for 80 people? You were like, okay, let's get very, very serious. What do we have to do? How can we facilitate this? What's in it for us? And the other side, you're there going, what can I give you? How can I help?
Yeah. And some of them you can actually have a crossover. It's like, I'd like to employ these bartenders to be able to make something and be able to...
that happened a lot. Yeah. You're like, you can do this one. I'll do this one.
Yeah, to kind of cross over and change it. No, I think there was some... It's interesting. I think it brought out the humanity. It brought out some of the inhumanity in some people, but the humanity in a lot of people. And it allowed us to... I don't know. I met more people because I was able to network in such a different way because of so many online things, and I'm hoping that will continue. But I do hope bars come open soon in Holland and they don't close in London or New York or anywhere. I think the hospitality industry has suffered enough, and I hate the fact that we are at the forefront of what's going on. All right, so let's talk about. All right, so both of you guys are brand ambassadors. We were talking about events, and people come to us. I remember this all the time. People coming to ask me like to sponsor things, right? Organizations, charities, fashion shows, parties, the buy down the street. Like they're constantly like, hey, can you sponsor? And people have all different types of requests. Some people are really cool, like, hey, I just need like a case of products. And then other people are like, I want 20 grand. And you get a logo on my invitation, and we'll let you have this one of your bottles in the back bar, and maybe it's in a cocktail, and you're like, what the fuck? Why does that benefit me at all? So I wanted to, like, how do you decide what events to support and which ones not to do? And then what are some of the creative ways you've learned to get the most for the little the littlest amount of money. That's the word I was looking for. Matt, do you want to start?
Yeah, I mean,
You've done a lot of events. You both have done a lot of events. So
I've done a lot of. I've been on one side of the events, which is doing them and seeing the cost and knowing how these things can spiral and knowing what can add on and actually what it takes to run a really good event. And it's about knowing your event. And then I'm on the other side, which is people asking for stuff.
So why do you choose to do one event over another?
For me, it starts with a base question, and it's a base premise is that you just need to know your brand inside out, upside down. As a brand ambassador, you're meant to be the most knowledgeable person about your brand in the market, full stop. I'm not saying the most knowledgeable person about whiskey for me or American whiskey, though I do think you should research that and be as knowledgeable as you can. But for your particular brand, you really should be one of the most knowledgeable person in your market about that brand. And that also translates to knowing your mission statement, knowing where you fit, knowing how much you cost, knowing who uses you, knowing what markets you might want to go into, what markets you might not. All the stuff that we don't really like talking about.
You can't just know the brand. You actually do need to know the marketing plans, the advertising plans, the brand plans. You can't just be this external person.
No, and then once you know that, you can sit there and go, what is the return on this? Is it bottle sales? Is it social media? Is it giving back and helping? And is it worth it? And it's a sort of mathematical sort of equation. Now, it's easy for me as one brand and one person, because I can really delve into that and I can really know it. For me, you mentioned charity. People come and ask for charity things, and if it's under a certain amount, I'm absolutely fine. I think it's great. We've done quite a lot of charity, and that fits in with our brand. We do a lot of charity work. If it's whiskey tastings and stuff like that and getting liquid to lips, then it's a bit more, well, how much does it cost per unit to get there? And what do I think the return's going to be? And it's a bit mercenary, but it goes like that. Because our bottles are pretty expensive, they're not massively bar heavy yet. And that's something we're going to expand on. But I know when I start having those conversations, it's not going to be financially massively viable, because we're going to have to run support for people who are going to need GP and stuff like that and need to make money on this. And we're like, right, okay, well, is the amount of exposure we get worth the cost that we're doing? But as I said, I have one brand and I know exactly where it sits, sort of like premium wise, and who would like it and the markets we want to go into. I have no idea what it's like with a portfolio of brands and a lot of people who have all got those different ideas, because I've worked for a lots of brands, and I've run big parties for Jack, and theirs was about, and Fernet Branca especially, giving back to the bar industry. And you're sitting there going, wow, all this money's disappearing. But when I was a baby bartender, I went to those parties, and it's what made me want to stay a bartender. So I'm there going, do that, please God. We need brands doing that to continue this profession. And if they kill that, then we're going to have less people wanting to be bartenders. But then also you've got Balvenie and stuff like that who are doing, private tastings, and the people at the end will drop 25k like a person on stuff they liked tasting. So I have no idea what it's like, how to pick and choose. It must be a nightmare.
Yeah,
I have to say, for me, it's not that difficult, luckily, because and my job specifically, I work with on trade. So we selected like about 100 accounts, and then we try to work closely with them. So we also do sometimes bigger events, but most of the time it's like events in locations with accounts we work with, or we organize some events for some of our brands, but we always try to do it with the locations we work with bars, venues we collaborate during the year. So it's like kind of like building up a relationship as well. So
what kind of events does like a bar or restaurant ask you to do, Ciro?
A lot of times what I heard recently is like everyone is in love with Italian food apparently, and in Italian aperitivo. So we're doing a lot of these kind of things, and they ask us if we can come up with some menus for them with Italian products and do some aperitivo, and then sponsor products and then pay for the menus and things like that. So that's something that happens a lot. But yeah, it depends on the location as well. And what I always try to do is like try to create a good match for both sides. It's like, I'm not going to force you to use a product that doesn't fit you, as I'm not going to use a brand that doesn't fit you by if you ask me to. Like and having a portfolio actually sometimes helps because then you can like redirect. It's like, okay, I see you want to do this thing with this brand, but I think your concept is more like this, and I think goes more in this direction. Why don't we do it with this other brand? So sometimes also it's like you're not gonna say yes to that, but also you're not saying no. That's not happening. It's just like, oh, at this point I can't do it. Unfortunately, I don't have the budget for that, but I have this other idea and I can do this and this and that. Why don't we work on that? So it's I think it's always trying to find a balance in between like what you can actually do, the budget you have, your dreams and your ideas. Also because I still have like a really bartender mentality. So a lot of times I forget that I'm working for a brand and not for the bar. So I'm like, oh, I think it's really cool to do this in the bar, blah, blah. And then like, yeah, it's good for the bar, but for the brand, yes, you're right. Wait.
Yeah. And it's
I'm
hard.
gonna make it
I
interesting for
totally
the
get
brand
that.
as
What
well.
do you feel about giving? The thing that always pissed me off, because I used to run, before I became the brand ambassador, my job was actually, it was great. I had like a couple $1 million budget, and my job was just luxury events. That's all I did. So I could sponsor anything I wanted across the United States, as long as it fit within the luxury portfolio. So Rolls Royces and private airplanes and anything like, food and wine festivals. It was a lot of fun.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
But I still hate it when people ask me for money. They'd be like, oh, we want $20,000. I'm like, for what? So you could be there. I'm like, so you want me to give you $20,000 and you want me to build out a bar and then you want me to supply all the staff, all the product and stuff like that. So my 20 grand is going where? They're like, well, you get a logo. And I'm like, fantastic. And like, you should be honored to be in our event. I'm like, no.
Thank you, but no.
Yeah, no. I mean, I used to come up, my negotiation tool was this. I said, I'll make you a deal. I'm not giving you 20 grand. I said, I'll give you 5 grand. I said, obviously, but I will spend 15 grand and build a lounge. Like I used to create these like luxury lounges, and I will spend the money on a lounge that's going to enhance your event. And you will agree on but it was so that way it's enhancing my brand. It works for me. I think my budget is limited. So if I give you 20 grand, then I have no money to do what I want to do. So, and to do a cool activation. So I'll give you this, and then I will spend the money on your event, but in my own way. And that was one way I got around it. I don't know. So I don't know.
I think that's really smart, yeah, because at the end it works for both sides, and your brand is gonna definitely have an advantage compared to the first option, and then also the event itself at the end is gonna have like an extra value.
That was some of the ways. I don't know. Do you guys ever give money, like just money, or like is it all product and?
No, in my case, yeah, we don't have a huge budget in general. Like sometimes for specific projects, like let's say Old Fashion Week, then we have it, or like Negroni Week. So there are some projects that we have budget, but then it's like for a specific thing. But in general, yeah, we had sometimes requests like that, and yeah, I told this episode yesterday that happened to me once. A company, I'm of course not saying which one, but we had a meeting with the marketing director, and then it's a really global big company, and then they were like, oh yeah, that's how you usually work. So basically you have to give us 10K, and then we decided when, how we're going to use it, and using your brand. I was like, okay, so basically let me get, I'm not sure if I got it. So I'm paying you 10,000 euros a year, and then you will decide how to use it, when to use it, if you use it, I don't know, but I have no say in that. It's like, basically yes. Okay, I think that I'm going to thank you for your time, and it's been a pleasure meeting you. I don't think we have much more to say to each other, and unfortunately, the way that our company works is not in line, and I can't help you. And but thank you very much.
I think you were smart in that decision, Matt. I mean, you guys have a rule of thumb.
Not for us. I mean, it's a sort of case by case basis, but it's sort of common practice to ask for sort of money, stock, retros over here, and to do that negotiation. But I think if you go into it knowing it's always a negotiation, and it's what you are getting for it, it's what you want for it. It's like buying menu listings and stuff like that. It's all about it's all about maths. You do maths, and I think it's great what Ciro was saying about working with 100 accounts, and that's where your hard work is, knowing the accounts that are going to work for you, and then you invest in that relationship. So Yeah, we haven't got a rule of thumb. I've been in bars like that, and I've helped design menus, and I've been on the other end of it, and you sort of get a sort of spider sense for this is going to be money well spent, or this is not going to be money
Right.
well spent.
Well, actually, talking about that, I would love to hear more about. Actually, it's one question I've never because UK is a pay to play market. England is a pay to play market. So
yeah,
how do you how does that work? Because it's illegal here. So
yeah, completely. I mean, that was one of the first things when just before lockdown in I think it was about September 2019, we had the American team come over here, and when somebody first just said it blatantly outright, it's very businesslike. This is how much it would cost. This is the volumes we think we could do. This is what exposure you get. That they just because they started talking about exchanging money over a bar, and they were like, "Oh my god, this can't be happening." But it is a pay to play market here, and it's all about knowing your worth as a brand, knowing their worth as a bartender. I don't begrudge anybody for talking numbers. I used to feel really, really uncomfortable about talking about money, and but I've now discussed this with friends, and they've said, "Look, all I want is X, Y, Z," and you come in and you drop some money. If you have a meeting, you bring people here, and then now it's got very. I've realised that these contracts can get anything down to, negotiating about how many social media posts you get, how much your product is used with a specific bartender holding it. What's happening? Is that Emma saying hi? Hi, Emma, the gin monkey. And so it's got really, really specific. And when everybody's happy about what you're getting for your investment, you sit there and you shake hands and you go about your day. It's nice that it's out in the open, but then sometimes you do sit there and somebody goes, "This is what I want." You go, "Yeah, we can't talk."
Yeah, I was gonna say, 'cause sometimes it's gonna be people making me like, "I want 20 grand," and you're like, "Okay, well, how many cases?" I mean, I definitely have been in that deal where it's like, "Okay, I'm gonna spend this amount of money with you." And I've done it in the States back in the day, before we got locked down that you couldn't do pay to play, because New York was a pay to play market. It was not legally a play, but for a long time it just happened, and then they shut it down hard. I'll never forget when watching computers being taken out of Diageo's offices and stuff like that. This is 1995. It was 2005, 2006, something it was early days, or 2003. It was they really cracked down. But you would have that conversation, and somebody would ask me for money and be like, "Okay, well, how many cases?" Because it's also knowing how many cases they're going to be doing. But as you said, it could be social media posts, could be menu placements, cases.
Yeah, I've had bars ask for equipment rather than money. So will you install, if you're doing bottled cocktails or draft cocktails, can you install a draft system?
That's something that recently also we're seeing a lot. Yeah, they prefer to have before COVID also traveling, doing guest shifts and things like that. But now it's more equipment and support with material stuff.
It sits better with me like that, because I as a bartender, I love the idea that you've just given to a bar, you've given to the actual bar. Whereas sometimes I think sometimes cash, it feels a bit uneasy. But
okay, so how do you make sure you're getting the best deal, that it's a win-win for everybody? Is it about making sure okay, if this is how much, all right, so if I give you this amount of money, this is how many, if you bought this many cases, if you're going to sell this many cases, all right, then we kind of broke even?
Well, if you're breaking even, then you'd want, for me, I personally want some sort of prestige to go with it, some sort of marketing sort of thing, if you know what I mean, and that's why you the higher the impact of the bar, the less you're probably going to make, because they're dealing in something else. They're dealing in social media impact, impact for the bar scene. If you're talking about Shapes with no name, a bar with a Shapes for a name, the amount of bartenders I see going through there, and it's a real industry hangout. So you're influencing a group that maybe you're not influencing if you're paying somewhere else. And so it's just about doing, and it's just about knowing where your investment's going and who you're influencing and why you're paying for it. And then when everybody's happy, you sign that deal and it's gone and you don't think about it again.
And it's done, and there goes the money, as long as you're getting your value. And I guess you have to evaluate at the end of the year, did I get And that must be not an easy thing to evaluate, especially the ones where you're just getting the impressions, like where
I mean,
you're in the cool spot.
I'm no good at it, but there are people who crunch those numbers and literally measure column inches, measure posts, measure tweets, measure stuff like that, and retweets. I'm just like, I don't need anything more to do, so I don't want to fall down that hole.
No, yeah, that's a whole other thing.
Some agencies can do that. But you mentioned something that is also like really difficult to measure, like this, like how can you measure the impact that you're gonna have on future bartenders or young bartenders that this is the bar where you had that activation or that product in stock, whatever. That's something that you can't really measure, but it's even more important probably.
I completely.
It definitely is. It's one of the hardest things about being a brand ambassador, because a lot of the things that we do are hard to measure.
Really. I mean, you say that. I mean, look at two of your brands. I mean, Fernet for a start. The amount of Fernet Branca t-shirts I see, and the amount of people who love Fernet Branca, and they're all in the bar industry, and you're like, how do you measure it? That. Do you know, it's finite. You can't actually write a label on it, but they're doing something right. Absolutely right.
No, I agree. And it is one of the biggest arguments. There used to be a big argument. There was somebody who worked at Diageo who hated the brand ambassador program. He's actually still there. And it's why all the ambassadors are in another agency. They're external, like completely external. They have it's because he would kill that program every day, all day, because he's like, I can't measure it. And he's an old school, like really old school. He's an old white crusty dude.
Yeah, but I think that's also like, that's the point. It's also like a kind of a old society, new society, old economy, new economy. It's like, for example, if I would talk about this with my grandparents, they would never understand what I do. They're like, what is that? Is that a real job? Is that everything that has to do with creativity, with something that you can't measure, it's like, for them, it's not really work. It's like, but sometimes these kind of things like creativity or things that you can't really measure, they move in millions nowadays. So is that a real job? Well, it's definitely moving a lot of money. So I would say yes, but
yeah, that's the most difficult thing. No, it's a great point. It's like, because people are like, is that a real job? My mother asks me that all the time. But it is, and it's like, how do you measure that impact? And it's like, that's what, when we have KPIs, and those are the hardcore ones, but like what you do is so above and beyond that, and it's really hard to capture that. And I don't think we'll never be able to, except for the brand just organically grows, but you never really get credit for it. Well, at least I never, like, when Bullet Bourbon took off, I was the only person not mentioned. I'm like, I worked in that brand when it first launched. Like, I was like, I worked on Don Julio, I worked on Ciroc, I did all the brands. But anyway, it's the pat on the back is just not going to happen. But for you, Matt, you're the only guy in for a while in London, so you definitely have a direct impact. And all right, so we're wrapping it up, but I always like to end two kind of fun questions. So everyone is at an event, and you guys have done lots of events where something has gone terribly wrong. Like what is one of the funniest disasters that ever happened to you?
I've got a couple, but I'll.
It's funny now.
Yeah, it's funny now. It's hilarious now. But no, I have a couple, but I'll stick it to one. You can come back for the last one if you really want. Every year, it wasn't for my brand at the moment, but every year for a fair few many years, I've worked in the Swiss Alps for Davos, and you work for the Financial Forum. You work for a lot of people who start at early in the morning, do a lot of business, and then you'll have these sort of parties at night. Usually only one night of the week, because everybody's sort of like, it's mainly about work, and then it's a giving back, it's a thank you. And I one year it was on a Friday night. We set up for this party. Everything arrived. We set up for this party. We absolutely smashed it. It's a brutal shift for Bartender, because we finished at 1. It was unbelievable music. Everybody had an amazing time. At the end, we're stood on empty bottles of stock. Your drip trays turned into an ice well, and you're just like, okay, my OCD couldn't even help this. We just got slammed. It was weeds all the way. It's brilliant. And then you have to prep for the next day, and it was like 2 a.m. finish. Started juicing, started prepping all the coffee machines, because they're coming in at 6. And you're like, oh my God, we got through everything, sent the bar team home. Everything was perfect. And we're like, okay, great. Well, tomorrow is just all the high ups, the CEO board, everybody comes in, they have a thank you sort of drinks, and we're done quite early. And we're like, okay, well, we're broken. Let's go home. Sent all the team home. Myself, bar manager, and the venue manager, we're in the cab back about an hour back because you can't stay in Davos Central because it's so expensive. And we're like, I've forgotten something. I'm sure I've forgotten something. And he's like, yeah, I'm sure we have. We went through the checklist again. We're like, we haven't forgotten anything. It's all good. It's absolutely all good. Woke up 10 a.m. No messages, nothing. We're like, oh, we did a good breakdown. Great. Got in for the next event. There was a crossover, and we're like, brilliant. Set up. The bartenders were in, and they'd set up at the stations, and they go, brilliant. All we need is stock. And I was like, yeah. Oh, there wasn't a delivery on Saturdays. They delivered it all the night before, and we'd split it and used what we used, and we'd left the rest outside in -15. And we went running out. And now I've never seen spirits freeze, but everything had ice crystals in it. All the single malt, I do it in my trainings all the time. I tell people that if you get something cold enough and it's non-chill filtered, it goes really cloudy like seaweed, like swamp water. We had these beautiful single malts that were like cloudy and like gelatinous, and we're just like, oh. The only things that didn't freeze were Monin. The Monin syrup was still liquid.
How is that possible?
We're like, okay, that's amazing. And Bailey's.
Wow.
And so we ended up serving. You've never seen a turnaround so quick. We were set up for like a champagne reception. Suddenly, it became a milkshake and espresso martini bar that was just pumping out anything that could have Monin in it, anything that could have Bailey's in it.
Wow.
And these CEOs were like, oh, great idea. Amazing that you turned it into this sort of fun party thing for the end. God. And we're like, frozen Dom Perignon in the back. Just going,
oh my God.
Oh God.
Oh, that just broke my heart. The thought of frozen Dom Perignon. Ciro? That was brilliant, Matt. I love that.
That's hilarious. I mean, now I'm sure there was
now.
I
can imagine sweat just like
I think my brain kind of filters all the bad experiences, and I just kind of forget. So I was thinking about that for a while, and I can't really remember like something really bad that happened. But there is something that I find really, really funny. That we were doing this activation where we were doing foraging with bartenders, and that project was not mine. I was just supporting. And then the person in charge apparently kind of screwed with like invitations and then organizing a few things like the bus that was going to take us from here to the location that was like in the middle of nowhere in the center of the country. So there were a few things that were not going well that day. And I was already like, oh, I'm also like perfectionist, OCD. Like, I was like, how is that possible? There is no food on the bus. There is no water on the bus. But the funniest thing was that we're supposed to be like around 20 people, more or less. Few didn't show up, but at the end we were like 10. But the bus, for some reason, was like one of the huge 70 people buses. So we were like, we saw this bus arriving. I was like, no, this can't be ours. This can't be ours. I looked at it, it's like, brand day. I was like, fuck. And the guys, 10 bartenders were like, oh, guys, you guys have a lot of budget. I was like, yep, that's it, guys. That's how we treat you, you know? Choose your seat. You can move around, you can do whatever you want. It's like your bus. Still no food and no drink on the bus, so we drove for like an hour there and back, and then the guys were just like, you know, just chatting, whatever. But you know, the funny thing, there were like 10 people on the bus for 70. Like,
wow,
amazing.
Really weird.
So funny. I was gonna say, I had runs like I ordered. I learned this very quickly about language. In Miami, a lot of people speak Spanish, and I ordered. I needed 20 liters of lemon juice. I ordered in Spanish, lime is limon. So I got 20 liters of lime juice. And because they were like, it's limon. I was like, no, the yellow one. They were like, oh, they're like, yeah, we don't do that. I was like, what do you mean? You know, it's just one of those things. And the drink definitely did not work. You know, sometimes you can alternate it, but it was with Scotch worked very specifically with lemon and not lime. Yeah, that was like finding limon. But yeah, I learned my language lesson very quickly then, that limon. Now I had a
Lost in translation.
it became the yellow lemon, not the green lemon, yellow lemon. And but yeah, I've had many, but that was one that always stood out in my brain. All right, so to wrap it up, if you could give one word, like everybody learns some important life lessons while you're on the job, that you wish somebody had told you. If there's any life lesson you would like to share with other brand ambassadors who might be doing the job that you kind of learned the hard way, or that you just think, this is they should know this if they don't know it already. Ciro?
I think it's about, we mentioned it during this chat. I think it's about also not having a clue. And what I always felt, I've always had this kind of imposter syndrome, and I was like, oh, these people are so much better than I am. They know so much more than I do. And then through my career, my life in general, I just realized that most of the time it's not true. Most of the time people are just like pretending, and they have, maybe they're more confident. They just come across as more experienced, but a lot of times they also don't have a clue, and they just want you to come up with something or do something, but they don't know how, what exactly. So they just become more aggressive or arrogant, also because they don't know how to explain it. So they just think that that's the way to cover it up and then make it look like it's you're an incompetent, like a stupid person, and then you don't know what you're doing, blah blah, whatever. But they also don't have a clue. So if I could talk to myself when I started this career, I'll just say to myself, just take it easy. They also have no clue, so it's fine.
Those are great words of advice.
Yeah.
I've definitely learned that with age myself.
I honestly think mine would be following on for that. It would just be honestly, don't take it personally. No, never take it personally. It's quite easy for me to say because I come from a bar background and stuff like that, and I talk bar and stuff. But and I haven't been in some really, really horrible situations. But at the end of the day, it's a brand. I love it. It's my job, and I really, really support it and respect it. But you can't take somebody asking for 20 grand seriously or personally. You can't take somebody saying they coming up to your stall and saying, "So why are you selling a bourbon at a whiskey festival?" Or I only drink whiskey without an E and stuff like that. It's not personal. It's just nothing to do with you. It just don't take it personally. And I think if you can connect to that and not take it personally, then you start having fun. So when people start negotiating with you, like, oh, this is fun, we can trade things. Or when people want to do events with you, like, do you know what would really work? What would really work is if we do this. And sometimes it doesn't quite work, and you're like, oh, but that was so cool. We nearly did it. We'll do the next one. As soon as you start taking stuff personally, you can get really stressy really quick.
Yes. Stressy?
Yeah.
Did you say stressy?
Yeah. I talk drivel sometimes.
We learned a new word today. Stressy. No, I think that's great, because I used to take things very personal, like about the brand, because the brand does become part of you.
Yeah.
Especially when you work for a few brands, and I would be offended if somebody like insulted the brand. I'm like, I don't own this brand. Like, it's not my brand.
Yeah, at the end, you don't get shares at the end of the year.
Exactly. If it sells, I'm not getting any. I don't get any of it. So I should stop taking it so personally. But I think those are great words of advice. And imposter syndrome is something we've had a lot of conversations on the show about that, and it's something I think a lot of people, I including myself, suffer from. And yeah, learning that, like, you know what, you're doing the best you can, and the other person, they probably don't know as much more. They just are more confident because they might have been doing this a little bit longer, and they might know a little bit more, but most people are still figuring it out, and which is fine. And I think just owning it. Sometimes I'm just like, you know what, I don't know exactly if I'm doing this 100% correct, and I'm just sharing that with you, and I'm just gonna figure it out. I've been
just
doing
add more sugar syrup.
Exactly. Well, gentlemen, this was a lot of fun. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you.
And it's really great hearing all your insights and all your stories. So as I mentioned, this will stay on Facebook for 2 weeks, and then it's also on YouTube, and then it's also on my website, Duff on the Rocks. It's like there's a whole channel there called Celebrate the Brand Ambassador. And
Amazing.
eventually it will be a podcast. But thank you for being my episode.
Fantastic.
It's a pleasure, and
so
I hope I
much.
see you both at an international event at some point soon. would be nice.
I hope so. Ciro,
I hope so too. Thank you so much, guys. I might be in London soon, so I'll hit you up, Matt.
Well, yeah, please drop me an email. I'd love to go out and take you around. And this is the other thing that's great about our job is you get to know people everywhere. It's just fantastic.
that is the best,
Totally
one of the
true.
best parts of it. Well, have a great evening.
Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you.
Bye bye. Ciao, guys.
Night.